Hello, students. I hope everybody's doing well out there. I'm doing just great, except I just dropped my mouse, so hold on just a second. All right, there we go. Okay, so we are going to be learning more about the human body now, and we're going to key in on the digestive system. So this will play into the idea of, remember, we're going to have a project model and that kind of thing. So we can be thinking about a model you could make of the digestive system, for instance. Okay, so speaking of that, I would like to have a Zoom class with y'all next week. I'm trying to schedule that for next week with everyone so we can get together during class time. Now, I won't be doing the lecture. I'll go ahead and send the lecture ahead of time so you can listen to that when you need to. And we'll just have 30 minutes or so next week to just chat about any questions you may have. Some you may have written down or something like that. Or, questions about how the project will work and things of that nature. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll send you an invitation, the Zoom. I'm assuming you've done that with some of your other classes at this point. So I'll send the invitation along, and then hopefully you'll be able to join. I realize some of you may be sharing computers with older siblings who might need them at that same time. And if that's the case, I apologize for that, which is one of the reasons, by the way, that I am recording these lectures. Okay, so let's move on. Here we go. In your book, you're going to see on pages 164 through 168, you have a project here. It's called Designing an Experiment, and it has to do with the digestive system. And the reason is that it's going to ask you. You're going to be asking a question. So that's how a science experiment usually begins. I ask a question, and your question at this point is going to be something along the lines of how are taste and smell related? Does smell make a difference to the taste of my food? Things like that. If you read through the pages, you'll see what they're looking for. And I'd like you to go ahead and do that little write-up there and come up with an idea for this project. Okay, so we're looking at a picture there of foods that maybe have very strong tastes. And we'll get into today, specifically today on the digestive system, we're going to be looking at how we taste things and how we smell things. Which actually brings in the brain as well, right? So that's part of the human body, and you could make a model of the brain if you were interested in doing something like that. So I will talk a little bit about it, and then you'll be able to, from your reading, be able to answer some questions that are being asked in your book, and then you're going to end up with a little a little experiment that perhaps you can test on a family member or something like that. Okay? All right, I hope it works out. I'd like you to get a picture of it and send it to me when you get it done. And then eventually, hopefully, I'll get a chance to take a look at your books and see how you're doing on that one. So taste and smell, is there any connection? And that's basically our question that you're going to be trying to develop an experiment to answer. So it turns out that when we are eating something, our mouth right here, we have our tongue. We're going to talk about how that receives things to make a taste. And furthermore, while we're eating, we're also breathing. We don't want to breathe and eat at the same time in the sense that we don't want what we're eating to go down into our air tube. But we are usually sniffing things as we eat them. And there's a part of our brain right here called the olfactory bulb of the brain. And it is going to receive that information right there from the smells that are coming in. All right, so I'm going to bring that in. Oh, here we go. We have our food. Sorry, it's not a very good picture. I just am realizing. We get a smell signal from the nose and a taste signal from the tongue, and then we have the flavor. We put it all together right there. We'll be talking a little bit, if you've been sick, have a cold, and you've got a stuffy nose, you may have noticed that your food doesn't have as much taste to it, and we're going to see why. This is a picture of our olfactory bulb right here, the receptors. The bulb is actually literally part of the brain. Okay, you can sort of see it there. I'll show you another picture in a minute. When we smell something, the chemicals of the things we're smelling enter into our nasal cavity and dissolve into this tissue right here, and it's nervous tissue. So nervous tissue means it's part of the brain. And I'm going to show you, bringing it up a little closer here, right there at the top of our nasal cavity. Notice we have the little bone part there, right? But there's these special cells that are making their way through there. And there's a mucous membrane on here that keeps it kind of, what's inside your nose, right? When you blow your nose. And so that is up there, and we'll bring it in a little closer. This is what happens. This is the part by the nose, right up there. And these are reaching down through the bone right here. And there are these cells right here. Notice these little dots. It says they're odorants. That's the things we're smelling. And we have these specialized little cells right here. And the cilia are on them. Cilia kind of is like little hairs. So it turns out there's little hairs in your nose that are there as receptors to do what we're trying to do here with our sense, and that is to smell something. All right, so it's called olfactory epithelium. The smell comes there. It has to be able to dissolve onto this. I mean, you know how some things don't have a smell, right? That's because whatever they're made of can't dissolve into your epithelial tissue in your olfactory region. And so mostly though, foods will dissolve in there, things that we're eating. So most things have a nice smell or a bad smell, depending on what it is. So then those smells dissolve and they get taken up by the cilia here, and it's now turned into a chemical message, which is pulled up through these nerves up to another nerve. These are connecting to another axon of another nerve, which will take those up to the brain. So this is part of the brain, this little deal right here. It's called the olfactory bulb. It reaches down inside the skull. In fact, I'll show that to you right here. So the brain's here, and that olfactory bulb is right there, kind of reaches down. I will say something interesting about the nerve cells in the olfactory bulb. They're the only nerve cells that actually regenerate. So every, 4 to 6 months or so, we get new olfactory epithelium. So it keeps our sense of smell nice and vigorous, so we can smell things. And then it takes it to our brain, and our brain will interpret the smell. Sometimes the smell will be familiar, therefore we have actually a memory portion in our brain that remembers the smell and say, oh, that's popcorn, I like popcorn, that kind of thing. And sometimes you'll smell something and it'll take you back in your memory, like back when you were a child or something like that. I guess you're still children, aren't you? Back when I was a child, I might smell something and it reminds me of a time that I went to, a carnival or something like that. It's pretty amazing what our brain can do. All right, so that's kind of the background of that. Now we're going to get into the digestive system. Next week we'll talk more about the digestive system and the way it all works. So this week is kind of an overview. Then I'll get back to the idea of how we taste things. So what is the digestive system? We call it the GI tract, which stands for gastrointestinal tract. Gastro meaning stomach, intestinal meaning intestines. It's also known as the alimentary canal. That is kind of the fancy word for the digestive system. And the point of the digestive system is to break down food and absorb the nutrients that are in it. So the nutrients will get absorbed and into the bloodstream from our food. It gets broken down, and then what happens is those nutrients go into our blood and they allow us to feed our cells. So our cells get the nutrients they need, and mostly they get the nutrients to make energy, right? So we're trying to make energy in the form of something called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. It's going to go through this fancy deal where we swallow it into our stomach, into our small intestine, and then into our large intestine, and whatever we don't use comes out at the end. These other organs right here, the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas, are what we call accessory organs, and they actually help in the digestive process. I think we're going to watch a little video here in a minute. After this slide, I think we see a video. And then next week, we'll go into some detail on this as well. All right, so here is our model here. If you were making a model of the digestive system, it might look something like that. All right, so the digestive system takes in food, breaks it down so that we can use it or store it. Sometimes we're storing it for later, right? And it gets rid of the things our body can't use. Any sort of waste products like that we want to get rid of can be taken out of our body through the digestive system. The digestion itself is actually the process of breaking things down. Okay, so we're going to take something kind of big and break it down smaller. Then we can use it. The second half of digestion, so it's digestion is breaking down, and then we have the second part, which is called absorption. So the whole system is digestion and then absorption. The organs that break down food form the digestive system. The path that food follows in the digestive system is called the digestive tract. It starts with the mouth, moves down through the pharynx, through the esophagus, down to the stomach, like I said, and into the intestines. and then out whatever we're not using. Okay, so that's sort of the system there. Let's watch a little overview about it.
Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25 centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete. TED-Ed is a nonprofit. If you value our work, please...
All right, so that was a good overview of everything for the digestive system. And like I said, we'll be talking about it next week as well. So we'll cover some of that stuff that was in that video next week. All right, so digestion is the chemical breakdown into individual components. It's also physical, so physical and chemical breakdown. It starts in the mouth, which is why we're talking about taste today, right? So with our lips, our teeth, our tongue, our jaw muscles, they start physical breakdown, but they're actually just crunching it into pieces. Your mother's probably told you to chew your food well, right? Chew it well. And that'll help, because that'll help break it down so that your stomach doesn't have to do quite so much work. But there's also chemicals in there in the form of saliva, otherwise known as spit, right? And these chemicals include amylase and lysosome, and they mix with mucus and antibodies to dissolve the food, allowing for taste. They also, that mucus helps to swallow the food, right? It makes it nice and smooth, so it comes down. And the antibodies actually will help kill off any bacteria you might have put in your mouth accidentally, either from the food or just from the area around, your hands, things like this. So all of that in there is to keep us safe and to start the beginning of digestion. So you can see there the picture of the mouth. We have, our lips are important. There's actually, and they said on children even more so, there's actually some taste buds in the lips. I thought that was interesting, mostly for children. Our gums are actually keeping our teeth in place, so that's good. We have a palate here, a hard palate, a soft palate, with at the very end hanging here is the uvula. This helps in the process of swallowing. It closes off this area well so we can swallow everything down. We have our tonsils. That's part of the lymphatic system, which is part of the immune system that keeps you well. And then, of course, you can see all of our teeth right here. We have different, we're going to talk about teeth in just a minute. All right, and then our tongue, which we'll talk a lot about our tongue, because it's primarily responsible for the sense of taste. So the saliva, here we go. We have saliva that's being produced in our mouth. It's the spit, right? There are 3 different types of salivary glands. We have the parotid gland on both sides of the mouth. We have submandibular, which means under the jaw, on both sides, and then on both sides sublingual, which means under the tongue. All right, so each one of these is going to secrete some saliva. It turns out smelling or seeing or even thinking about food can start saliva flowing. You may have had this happen to you if you smell something really good and you say, oh, my mouth is watering. Well, the mouth that's watering, that is the saliva, I guess, because your body is getting ready to start to chew on something, to put something into your mouth. And that's when, it needs to start the digestive process. So it'll kind of prime the pump there and get it ready. They even say if you chew on something with no taste, that you will start to release some saliva. Just the process of chewing, the muscular action of chewing causes saliva to be released as well. So these glands, called the salivary glands, will secrete the saliva and start breaking down food with certain enzymes, which I mentioned in the previous, amylase, lysosome, those kind of things. It also is just wetting the food. It's making the food wet and soft and making it easier to swallow. Here's a little video we'll watch, kind of a silly one, but it's good because it does explain the process of saliva, where it's coming from, and that kind of thing. Here we go.
We might not think about it a lot, but the insides of our mouths are really wet all the time. There's a ton of spit in there. Well, Squeaks, don't lick me. There's always some spit or saliva in our mouths because it has some really important jobs, like helping us talk and taste. It even helps break down our food. Saliva comes from special parts of your body called salivary glands. They look kind of like little blobs, and you have 6 of them, 2 under your tongue, 2 by the back of your jaw under your chin, and 2 under your ears. Our salivary glands are always making more spit. We might not even realize how much since we swallow most of it, but they make 4 to 8 cups of saliva every day. That might seem like a ton of spit, but it's a good thing we have it. Saliva is mostly made of water, and by keeping our mouths wet, it helps us move our tongues and lips around when we talk. Saliva is also super helpful for eating. It makes the food in your mouth nice and wet, which makes it much easier to move around as you chew and swallow. And at the same time, it makes your food taste better. The things that give your food its taste, like salt and sugar, have to dissolve in water for the taste taste buds on your tongue to be able to taste them. Without saliva, even a cookie would just feel like a bunch of dry, crumbly, tasteless stuff in your mouth. I'm glad we have saliva too, but it does even more than help us talk and taste things. It also helps us digest or break down some of our food before it even gets to our stomachs. Even though most of saliva is water, there's also small amounts of other stuff in it, including something called an enzyme. Enzymes are tiny little particles way too small for us to see, but they're in lots of different parts of our bodies. And one thing enzymes do is help break down our food into smaller and simpler pieces that are easier for our bodies to absorb and use as energy. The type of enzyme in saliva is in charge of breaking down foods like bread, cereal, or potatoes. As soon as you put the food in your mouth, your saliva gets to work breaking it down. That way, it gets a head start on digesting it before you even swallow. So besides helping us talk and taste, saliva also helps us get energy from our food. And those are just some of its jobs. Spit is super useful. I know all this talk about food is starting to make me hungry too, which is perfect because it's almost time for lunch. Let's go use some of that saliva. Thanks for joining.
Okay, I thought that was kind of fun to watch. So let's back to our teeth here. So they're different shapes and sizes. This is because they have different jobs, but mainly they're there to break the food down, to chop the food up. All right. These front teeth right here are called the incisors. So 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. And those are for cutting. Okay, so they're real sharp like a knife. If you need to cut food right there, it would do that. Right here are their canines, right here, that are sharp and pointy. Those are for tearing. All right, we can tear. Think about if you're eating a piece of beef jerky, you know, you want to cut it and tear it like that. And then the flat ones, the molars and premolars back here, they're flat because they're for crushing. So these will crush the food. If you think about a cow chewing all that grass, the cow's teeth are all flat like this with some just some sharp ones at the front for pulling the grass up. And so therefore we have that design of our teeth there specifically to take care of different kinds of food. And so the design of our teeth show that we are what are known as omnivores. An omnivore is a creature who eats both plants and meat. And so that's what we are designed for, is omnivorous diets. If you look at the tooth up close, you can see it looks like this, okay? The outside part of it is called the enamel. And then we have the inside part where the pulp is where the nerves are coming in. Okay, so nerves come in right here and they actually influence all this tissue, this living tissue called the dentin. And they're set down into the gums very securely. Our gums are holding them securely. It's important to keep our gums nice and healthy so that they will hold on to our teeth. It's important that our teeth are not loose. Now, when you are younger, of course, you have baby teeth and you lose them over time. They're called deciduous teeth, and that means they fall out because you have permanent teeth that are coming in later. So let's say this is a baby tooth. What will happen over time is these roots right here that are down in here will actually just dissolve away. So this pulp will, the nerves will go away, and the root here will dissolve, and then it'll become loose. And if you've had a tooth come out, which I'm guessing you have, it gets real wiggly, and then you pull it out, and then it doesn't have all of this root system on there, does it? That's because all that has already dissolved. And then the area is ready for your tooth underneath there, your permanent tooth, to come in. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have had any problems with cavities, but what happens with cavities is this, let's say that we're looking at a molar right here, like these flat ones. Notice how there's grooves in there? Typically when we get cavities, they're in these flat teeth, and that's because in those grooves, food can stick in there. And if we get food stuck in there that has some acidity, and sweetness, so like let's say for instance some of those Sour Patch Kids, right, or Skittles, something like that, they are real chewy, very sweet, and they're actually acidic. Those can sit in there and the acid can start to eat away at the enamel, and then there are bacteria living in your teeth. That's natural, they're normal, they need to be there. Your mouth has lots of bacteria. Well, those bacteria love sugar, so they'll start eating that sugar on there, and they'll start digging into the tooth and making a hole, making a hole in the enamel right here. If that hole gets big enough, it'll reach down into the dentin and you will feel a lot of pain. And typically when that happens, you say, oh, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, I have a pain in my tooth. And that's when we take you to the dentist, and the dentist will actually fill the hole up with some sort of glue type stuff, a filling. We call it a filling. If you take care of your teeth, and especially if you eat sugary things, it's very hard to avoid sugary things, right? We all like them. But if you eat them afterwards, if you drink some water and make sure your teeth are, cleared out, and that's not just sitting there for a long time, then you'll have a better chance of them not leaving a hole in your tooth. All right, so trying to keep our teeth nice and healthy is a good goal. Our tongue is in our mouth. This is kind of a gross picture of it right there, right? Because it's just sticking way out. If you look in the mirror and you stick your tongue way out and say, like that, you'll see these lumpy parts in the back right there. You may not see your tonsils. Those are actually in your throat right there. But we're going to see these papillae that are on your tongue. Some of them are called fungiform papillae, filiform papillae, foliate papillae, circumvallate papillae. They're different bumps. That just means there's bumps on the tongue. So our tongue does play an important role in digestion. It pushes the food around while we're chewing it up. We have the saliva mixing everything. The tongue is a muscle. It's a very kind of a strong single muscle there. And it moves the food around into something known as the bolus. We saw that in the video right there. And then the bolus is moved to the back of the throat. The tongue is involved in helping us swallow. You may not have thought of this, but swallowing is one of the fundamental things we need to do to survive. In fact, that's part of our brain that's in the brain stem. We have the cells that show us, to make us swallow, because swallowing will save your life, right? You got to be able to swallow your food and to swallow your saliva, to be honest. And of course, the tongue is involved in the sense of taste. This is a picture of a tongue. Now, that girl's got a big tongue. Anyway, it shows you, in the old days, we used to say that we could taste bitter things way back here on these fungiform, and the sour and the salty and the sweet on the tip right here and on the sides. We've decided this isn't true. We can taste everything all around our tongue, but it is kind of true that smack in the middle of our tongue, we don't have nearly as much taste receptors there. They're not picking up as much taste. So truthfully, you can taste things better on the sides and tip and back of your tongue. That's because we have in those areas, all over the tongue, in fact, we have these taste buds. Now notice how it looks a little like the bud of a flower, doesn't it? Yeah, we have cells in here, and this is going to be the nerve that's taking the information back to the brain. Right here, there's a little hole. That's called the taste pore, P-O-R-E, like a hole. And notice right here, the top of these cells have these little hairs on them. So just like there's little hairs up in our nose to receive chemical signals, there's little hairs on our tongue. Yuck. It's weird to think of little hairs on our tongue. What will happen is we'll taste something, we'll break it up with our teeth, right? And those chemicals will come right in here and dissolve, because they're wet from our saliva, onto these little hairs. If we're able to taste it, right? In other words, if it's something humans can taste, then that taste sensation will be taken to these little nerves right here, okay? And that will be taken to the brain, and the brain will say, oh yes, I know this taste, it's popcorn, or whatever it is that you're eating. But like I said, this has been rejected for the most part by scientists, that it is regions of the tongue. This is a very, very close up picture, very close, of the taste bud pore. And there are some of those little hairs coming out. Does that gross you out just a little bit? That is really close up, like, 4,000 times magnified. And that's what your tongue looks like, y'all. So what about taste? Like I said, the food dissolves first, then it enters that taste pore. It binds to something called a chemoreceptor. It's a receptor that is specially suited and designed for recognizing chemicals, which is what we have in the food. And those hairs are called the gustatory hairs. Gustatory, with gusto, that kind of thing, has to do with taste. Gustatory cells release a neurotransmitter. This is all fancy stuff, right? Into the nerve. It's called an action potential or a nerve signal. It turns out that warmer foods have more taste. Now, I'm talking about warmer in temperature, not hot like as in hot sauce. There are 5 different tastes. So here's our taste bud again. Taste pore. The taste cells are down here. This whole thing is considered the bud. And then our chemical stimulus here. Okay. Look at there. It says physical stimulus. That means we can tell if something is, if it's hard or soft or whatever, like, the texture of something. The texture of ice cream is creamy. The texture of like cottage cheese is kind of lumpy, that kind of thing. It turns out there are 5 tastes that we can taste. We always knew about sour, salty, sweet, and bitter, and just recently they added this one called savory, which is kind of the taste of, the MSG stands for monosodium glutamate. It's kind of like salt, but it's different. It's if you've ever had Oriental food, Chinese food, with that soy sauce kind of a flavor, that's sort of what the savory flavor is talking about right there. All right, I think we're going to watch here, the main flavors are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. That's the other word for the savory taste, umami. So notice it's showing mushrooms. It's more like mushrooms in a sauce is what I kind of think of right there. This is the tongue. Remember, we've decided this isn't really true, but this is, we do taste better along the sides and tip, it turns out, but not necessarily only sour here. For our lab today, I didn't do this with myself, but if I had been with y'all, I would have had separate little tastes we would have put on the end of a Q-tip, and you would have touched them on your tongue to see if you could taste them better on certain parts of your tongue. Another video. Here we go. This is, I believe,
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? I'm all about mint chocolate chip, and Squeaks is crazy for strawberry. Even though I have a favorite flavor, I love getting to try new ones. Isn't it great that we get to enjoy so many different tastes? From ice cream to beets, from peanut butter and sardine sandwiches to bananas and peaches, there are just so many different tastes to taste. But taste doesn't just help us figure out which flavor of ice cream is our favorite. It also helps us tell if food is good or dangerous to eat. If we get a mouthful of spoiled milk, it'll taste gross. The icky taste will tell us to spit it out instead of swallowing it, which could make us sick. So how do we taste tastes? Well, if you've ever licked an ice cream cone, you know that the tongue is an important part. Your tongue is actually a muscle, like the muscles in your arms and legs that help you move. But it's a special muscle that can detect temperatures, textures, as well as how oily or chewy something might be, and of course, flavors. And there are at least 5 main flavors that your tongue can taste: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami, which is sort of a rich, savory flavor. Together, these 5 flavors in different amounts and combinations make all of the tastes that we can taste. So how does the tongue do it? Well, open your mouth and take a look. Your tongue is covered in small bumps that you can see and feel. These are called papillae. Those bumps are where you'll find the most important part of tasting: taste buds. Taste buds are much, much smaller than papillae. Too small to see. They sit in the grooves and on the walls of those bumps, and each papilla can have many taste buds. Even though they're super small, these little buds are where taste begins. Each taste bud is shaped like a teeny tiny pocket filled with even smaller little things, long thin strands called taste hairs. These hairs sit at the top of the taste bud, where tiny pieces of food can wander in when you eat. The taste hairs are how your taste buds sense the flavor of the food. Once they come in contact with the food, they turn the taste of that food into a signal. The signal then gets sent to your brain, telling it what you're tasting. Some taste buds can only sense one flavor, while others can sense all the flavors, although some more strongly than others. So you can only understand the flavor of your food once your brain has gotten signals from lots and lots of different taste buds. Now, you might have heard that different parts of the tongue are sensitive to different tastes, but that's not true. All 5 flavors can be detected equally well around the tongue, but the sides of the tongue are much more sensitive than the middle. That's something to remember when you're licking your next ice cream cone. Try tasting it with the tip of your tongue for your sense of the flavor. But your tongue isn't the whole story when you're talking about taste. Have you ever eaten a meal when you have a stuffy nose? Then you've probably noticed that smell is an important part of getting the flavor of food too. As you eat, some of the chemicals from your food make their way up into your nose. There, you have different kinds of cells that can sense them and send signals to your brain. So the taste buds on your tongue and the smell signalers in your nose work together to tell your brain all about the food you're eating. So the next time you're licking an ice cream cone or snacking on a sandwich, why not take a moment to appreciate your buddies in flavor, your taste buds? Without them, nothing would taste, well, like anything. Do you have any questions about food or animals or anything else? Get help from a grown-up and leave a comment below.
Okay, So that kind of just gave you the little video to go along with what we've been talking about right here. Which brings us to our lab. So if I had been with you today, we would have tasted different things on the Q-tips like I told you about. And then we would have done this little lab that I'm going to do on my own, which, yeah, kind of silly. Here we go. Hey everybody, here we are ready for lab time and into our introduction of the digestive system. So we're talking today about the way things smell and the way things taste. So if we'd been together today, I would have had several of these essential oils, okay? And I would have hidden them so you couldn't tell what they were, and then you would smell them. So I'm gonna smell one. Oh, that's kind of tough. Smells really good. All right, it turns out this one, you may not have got this one. This one, can you see it? It's basil. Basil, I'll pick that smells good. I'm gonna just pick this one now. Okay. Oh wow, nice. This is ginger. Would you have guessed ginger? You know that smell? I don't know if you have maybe someone you know that has some essential oils that you could smell some different ones and see if you can guess them. Oh, that was easy breezy. That's lemon. Yeah, yum. Wonderful. I would have picked ones for you that are pretty easy to figure out what they are, right? So, for instance, I probably wouldn't have picked cilantro, right? But I have this one is called cedar. So oh yeah, that's really good, right? Okay, so we would have smelled several things like that, and then you would have been guessing what they were. But then the fun part comes when we do a taste test. Okay, sort of like your little design you're going to make of things that you taste. I would have had you close your eyes and pick something. Now, since you're not here, we did just have Easter, so there's a possibility you may have some of these. All right, so I have these jelly beans. All right, so I'm going to pick one and I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to show it to you. So about right there, I'll show it to you. And then I'll taste it and y'all see if I'm correct. Okay, so I'm going to reach in and I'm thinking you can see it right, and I'm going to taste it. Okay, I'm thinking it's orange. Is that right? Am I right? It's really good. Okay, I'm going to pick another one. All right, can you see it? All right, it's different than the first one. I'm gonna guess cherry. Was that one cherry? I'm gonna have to go back and watch this video to see if I was right. Okay, so I would have got the ones. Have you heard of the game called Bean Boozled? Well, I probably wouldn't have done that on y'all because it's so gross. I mean, some of the jelly beans are really nasty flavors, you know, like dirty socks and I don't know, dog vomit or something awful like that. And so I wouldn't have done that to you, but I would have got the ones that were the real fun flavors, and you could have tried to pick out what you thought they were. All right, so we will continue with the digestive system next week, looking at the way that it actually gets taken apart with the acids and stuff like that. Okay, gang, hopefully I'll see you real soon. Bye. Hey, everybody, here we are. All right, that started again, yeah. So I did look, I went back after I looked at those jelly beans, and I was right. That second one, when I held it up, it looked kind of purple, right? So I thought, well, maybe that was grape. But I went and took the red ones were actually deep red like that, the cherry ones. So I was right, it was cherry. And because I tasted a grape one just to be sure, yeah, and it wasn't grape. All right, I'll probably have plenty of those left, hopefully when we get together again, that I can bring some of those for you. But of course, they're the sweet things that stick in your teeth and might make cavities. Yikes. So another option would be to go have a healthy snack. When you're devising your little lab, you might want to pick some healthy things. So there's some pictures here of some things that are generally considered to be healthy. Popcorn might be an iffy one, although I really like popcorn. I think they are generally a healthy snack. But fruit, look at the fruit down there with the yummy cream stuff you can put with it. One of the other pictures I was looking at had avocado toast. I don't know if you've ever tried avocado toast, but it's delicious. And so when you're designing your experiment, you might want to think of something. For instance, if you think about avocado, it's really about the texture, right? I mean, it doesn't have an overpowering flavor, and it certainly doesn't have an overpowering smell. So you might if you're testing somebody in your house, you might could stump them on a piece of avocado, except when they tasted it, that texture would probably give it away for sure. But different things like this for smell and for taste would be a good option for your experiment right there. So enjoy your snacks while you're on this break. Try to eat healthy. Keep your body healthy, and we don't have to worry about any viruses coming in to hurt us, right? Okay, gang. Well, I hope we see you soon. Next week we'll try the Zoom class, and I'll see if you have any questions or anything for me. Hopefully you've been writing some of those down. All right, gang. See you soon. Bye.